So Nas Daily, a very popular and well-known Palestinian content creator, posted a video finally sharing his thoughts on Palestine and Israel as a Palestinian who grew up in Israel. And I'd like to respectfully share my thoughts as a fellow Palestinian. Note that this does not give you the green light to go comment rude and hurtful things. This is simply a respectful sharing of thoughts on a matter that affects both of us. I'm not gonna dissect every part of the video, but just to summarize, it points out that there's suffering on both sides for Palestinians and Israelis. That often we are allowing extremists from both sides to get in the way from progress. And at the end of the day, we all just want peace, our home, and land to just live our lives. And that this isn't necessarily about Palestinians versus Israelis, it's about the concept of conflict in the world in general. While that is technically valid, I do feel like that's an oversimplification of what's happening and what has been happening. I don't feel like it's fair to just clump the history of the Palestinian people and the struggle with just any other struggle in the world. Oh, it's just a matter of two groups not getting along, when it's much more complex than that. And I do hear this argument a lot, that like if we just hold hands and love each other, then like the world's problems will solve themselves. And I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I feel like that's a very naive way of viewing all that has happened, because no situation is ever as simple as it seems. And the fact that the video presents this topic as the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, the word conflict, is very telling of the perspective. Because for me, and I think most Palestinians, it's not a conflict. It's ethnic cleansing, it's genocide, it's apartheid, it's discrimination. The list goes on. But to say that this has just been happening for 74 years without context to how it started, that's not really fair. While yes, technically it is a conflict, but that does not take into consideration the power dynamic between the two parties, the Palestinians and the Israelis. Israel is the power authority. They are the governing body over the Palestinians. And I always use the analogy of an adult and a child. Say you have an adult, a fully grown, fully developed 40-year-old, and a 3-year-old child. If you were to see them fighting each other, is that technically a balanced conflict? I would say no. Israel, as a fully functioning government with one of the top and most funded military programs in the world, compared to Palestinians who have close to nothing compared to what Israel has, because Israel has essentially stripped them of everything, it's just not the same thing. Israel has authority over Palestinians, therefore it's not a conflict. Now, regarding the complexity of the situation and what that video does not take into account, I generally break it up into two parts. One, what is happening right now, and two, what has happened in the past. With what's happening right now, we have Israel's illegal occupation of the West Bank. We have Israel's military control over Gaza. We have illegal Israeli settlements being built in the West Bank. We have land being stolen from Palestinians in the West Bank and in Israel. We have apartheid. We have the Israeli government rejecting the right of return for Palestinians who are not allowed to go back to their homes, to go back to their land. We have continuous violent attacks against Palestinian Muslims in Al-Aqsa, violent attacks against Palestinian Christians in their holy spaces. I can keep going, but I'm going to stop for the sake of this video. My point being that all of what I just listed out and more are put into place by the Israeli government. A governmental system that literally only exists by oppressing Palestinians. A system built to uphold Jewish rights and suppress Palestinian rights. So this just flippant, oh, it's just a conflict type of perspective doesn't take into account all the struggling that's happening right now to Palestinians because of Israel. Once all of those issues have been addressed, when Palestinians are truly considered equal to a Jew, then we can talk about loving each other and holding hands. Until then, we're going to be talking about two parties with very, very different power dynamics. Now, those are issues only regarding what's happening right now to Palestinians. Going on to number two, what has happened to Palestinians. Starting in 1948, actually before 1948, the genocide, the massacres, the ethnic cleansing, all of which technically are still happening till this day, but for the sake of this argument, let's keep this in number two. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in 1948 being executed, women being raped, children being thrown in ovens, entire villages being cleaned out of Palestinians in order to create the country of Israel that exists right now. All of that had to happen to Palestinians in order for Israel to be established. Jaffa, Haifa, Ramle, El-Lid, Bir al-Sib'a, Akka, Safad, Jalil, Tabariya, Al-Quds, Jerusalem. All of these Palestinian cities that for the most part were cleaned out of Palestinians cities that make up current day Israel. Yes, there are some Palestinians still left in those towns in Israel, like Nas Daily, but the vast majority live in refugee camps in Lebanon, refugee camps in Syria, refugee camps in Jordan, refugee camps in the West Bank, refugee camps in Gaza, anywhere and everywhere but their land. You have to take into consideration who's on offense and who's on defense. Because historically, Palestinians have always been on defense. Palestinians didn't just wake up one day wanting to fight. They're defending their land, they're defending their homes, they're defending their families. And they have been since 1948, when all of this started. By who? Israel. Israel was on offense, Palestine was on defense, and still is on defense till this day. So it's not fair to just speak as if none of that happened. To be a Palestinian who was born and raised in Israel with the Israeli passport and all the rights, it's extremely, extremely privileged to have that type of opinion. You are among the very select few who are blessed with the right to visit that land, unlike me and my family, and the vast majority of Palestinians who do not have the right to return to their land. Now, I am in no way claiming that I have a solution to this matter. Absolutely not. But what I do know is that there is a ridiculous amount of history and ongoing forms of discrimination against Palestinians right now that cannot just be swept under a rug and act as if it's not happening, which is kind of the perspective that's shared in that video. In the analogy of a parent and child fighting with each other, you as the third party are not going to yell at the child and say, stop fighting with your parent. You would look at the parent and say, why are you fighting with a 3-year-old? Yeah, we do all want peace and safety for our family and our land and our homes, but that's just simply unobtainable until the system, the Israeli government, truly views Palestinians equally to Jews. While every Palestinian has the right to their own opinion on this matter, I implore us to not just consider our individual experience as a Palestinian, but consider the experience for Palestinians as a whole. Because for the most part, we are all suffering to some degree, some more, some less. Nonetheless, we are suffering because of the Israeli system. Our views shouldn't reflect just our own experiences, but everyone's.